Morning, my name is Jay Beershank. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're gonna do a video that is interesting one, I think. Maybe someone will get some value out of this. Might have been an interesting video for me to watch 10 years ago. I've been traveling the world now full-time for 10 years. I just had Christmas with my mom, and it was the first time I'd had Christmas with her in 10 years. I've lived everywhere around the world. I've worked as many jobs as you can count on all your fingers and toes. I've lived first world, I've lived third world. I've gone broke, I've made money, I've done a lot for just in the sense of going out there and making a life for myself. I left when I was 18, I graduated high school, and I left the US. I didn't go to college. I just always knew that, you know, basically that my life is in my hands and I got to do what I want to do with it. And, you know, whether I was, basically what I'm referring to is college. I was thinking, you know, I don't need to do this. If I want to have any kind of life, it's in my hands to make it. And so I didn't fear not going to college. I just felt like the responsibility for me of seeing the world and traveling felt much more important and pertinent than going to college, actually. That's what was my mindset then. It was, I'm a human in the world and I have a responsibility to see the world and understand it a bit about what's going on and what people are doing, how people are thinking. That started because when I was 16, I went to Haiti on a mission trip with a church. My grandmother sent me there, and I don't know if she knew, but that changed my life. And I probably wouldn't have done what I did at 18 if I hadn't have been to Haiti a couple years before. What that basically showed me when I went to Haiti from where I'm from in islands out by Seattle, so very, you know, bougie, gentrified, good area. I don't come from a rich family, but it's an area with a lot of wealth. So what going to Haiti showed me was like, holy shoot, these people, they've grown up with a different perspective on everything. And basically what I thought then was these people, basically because they've been perceiving and living and experiencing such different information, their wants, needs, desires, value systems, you know, hierarchies of moral, you know, all this kind of stuff, like, is completely different than mine. They're a human, but we're seeing the world completely differently, and our ambitions and our hopes and our dreams are nearly incompatible, I guess you could say. Or, you know, they wouldn't be able to sit down and have a cup of coffee together because they come from different worlds. And as I've traveled now 10 years later, I can make a very honest and clear statement and say that everybody in the world is the same. And this was a interesting and maybe semi-naive thing for me to think at 16, that these people were so much different than me. But anyway, it sparked this seed in me that felt like, okay, if people in Haiti have a different perspective, well, then people in Mexico and people in India and people in Japan and all these people are going to have different perspectives, and it's my responsibility to go out and see the world and try to understand it from their perspective. Because if I'm only operating off of one singular perspective, that is the one from which I am from, then, well, you can imagine, it would felt like a big disservice to myself. Not only a disservice, but also a hindrance to my development, and also a hindrance to my ability to have freedom of choice, because I feel like there are many different ways to, you know, consider choices, but I think when you don't know that different choices exist, that's one of the hardest ones. And so basically what I'm saying is, I felt like by going to these different places and learning the world from their different eyes and their different perspectives, my choices would also open up, which has been completely true. But same as I said about the naivety of thinking people were different, there's also a naivety that I can acknowledge now about the excess of choices. For example, now I just got back to the USA. I've been living in Australia the past year. Before that, I was in India, and I was in Switzerland, and I was here, and I was there. And basically, I have so many choices about things that I can do and places I could live and all this kind of stuff, that it's completely overwhelming, and it's hard to know what, well, it's not hard to know, but too many choices can also be just as overwhelming as not enough choices. So everything has its flip sides. But basically, I've already talked about two things, but I just want to talk about the different ideas that I've came to after 10 years of traveling full time, because many people will maybe idealize this when they're young, or maybe many people are just curious to hear from someone like me, because many people don't do what I have done. So definitely those two things I said about, at the end of the day, everyone around the world, no matter where they come from or how poor, how rich, everybody is searching for, connection, safety, love. And the way in which we get these things might be different. To some people, it might be more money. To some people, it might be, their own business. To some people, it might be, a couple more animals. To some people, it might be another room in the house to rent out. And to some people, it might be a husband, a wife, a kid. But everybody in the world, no matter where they're coming from, wants those core things of just safety, acceptance, love. And to think that people are so different is an ignorant stance to take. And I think that the only reason that I thought that when I went to Haiti was just because it was my first time being exposed to someone who is so drastically different in the sense of what they had been brought up with. But at the heart of hearts, people's minds may be different, but at their heart of hearts and their souls, we're all here looking, searching, and, playing the same game, looking for the same things. We all get the enjoyment. Oops, sorry, I cut that out. Maybe that was an Amber Alert, but yeah. So we're all looking for the same things. So that's one of the biggest things that I would say. That's really kind of an interesting and rare thing that I think you don't hear, because there are so many different cultures, right? And culture is great, and it's really fun to see the different traditions that people have all around the world, and the different things people eat, and the different ways that they talk, and the different words that their language is composed of. And then, oh, there are different words. You think about how, oh, this word doesn't exist in this language. How does that change the way that this kind of person would think if they don't have that particular word? And there you can go as deep as you want, but you always got to remember, I think, to come back to it and to realize that, like, we are not that different as humans. And the easiest way to connect with people all around the world is to remember that, and to not overcomplicate things. I've always said that, like, you can, extrapolate things out as crazy as you want, but the easiest way to connect with people anywhere in the world is really, people say culture is made in the kitchen. It's really sharing a meal, sharing a hard day's work, sharing a drink or a cup of coffee, sharing some laughs and a smile. These things are the things that universally will change, the dynamics between you and another human being, no matter what. So, well, basically what I'm trying to say is we can mystify and beautify this idea of culture and, complexity and how different the world is, but really everybody is very much the same. And overcomplicating it will actually make traveling and connecting with people much more difficult, because you'll be searching for this special angle or some kind of special word or special cultural, play that's going to help you to connect with these people. But really humbling yourself and realizing that you're also not unique, and you're looking into the eyes of a brother or a sister who is the same as you, it will help you so much to connect with people all around the world. So that's one of the biggest things, is just like demystifying myself about the complexities of the world. It's like everybody is going through the exact same, human experience, no matter how drastically different the material aspect of it may be. So you can take that how you wish, but I think that that's really an interesting thing. Another thing is, so obviously I have not been around for a lot of the things that my friends have done, or how my friends' lives have turned out, or, I haven't had friends really since high school. I've met people on the road, and I've traveled with people, and I've done my best to make friends. But one thing about traveling for a long time is you become a one-man army, 100%. I mean, you'll check my last videos. I've had a girlfriend for the past 3 years. We're not together anymore, but that was a really crazy experience for me because I had been alone for so long that when you do have that person that you're with, it changes the dynamic so much. But the point that I'm getting at is you live on a different end of the world, literally and figuratively, in the sense of many people have, communities, and those communities have benefits and they also have hindrances. For example, I'm not worried about, anybody judging my lifestyle or having certain opinions or, feeling embarrassed by me or anything. Like, I don't have anything holding me back in the sense of social obligations, which can have its benefits and have its curses. And I recently was re-exposed to that, seeing my ex-girlfriend's, relationships and community back in her home country of Switzerland, and kind of seeing just how there is, when you grow up with people, and even if these people aren't necessarily super important to you personally, just that connection that you have with them can change the way in which you think and act, and the things in which you feel permitted to feel and act. And it's sort of like feeling confined into a cultural identity and a systemic identity that comes from just the people that you grew up with. So on one end of the spectrum, traveling for 10 years and kind of doing it the way that I've done it, where I've stayed away from the US and for a really long time, you are really free in the sense of, I'm completely my own man, I guess you could say, and I feel confident to be that person in front of anybody because I don't have anybody treating me in a way in which they believe me to be different because of how they were, grown up with me or something. But in another way, you don't have any community, which is really isolating and can be really lonely and can be really hard at sometimes. When I think about, wanting to, just when I have situations where maybe I would want support or things like that, it's always kind of on my back just to deal with it, which is great. I think that that's a great thing, but it's also very hard and it can be very lonely. And like, as I'm getting, a little bit older, you start to want to have that community more and more. And I've been feeling like I wanted it pretty badly since I was around 24. So, 5 or 6 years into traveling, I was really feeling like I wanted that community. And then I started to create that with my ex-girlfriend, and now I'm kind of on the other end of that. But anyway, this would be one thing that I would definitely try to get into people's mind before they decide to take some kind of trip like this, is the major strain you're going to put on your relationships with not only your friends from home, but also your family. You'll miss a lot of things if you're not able to, be around for them, which financially it often might not make sense. If you're going to do something similar to what I did, maybe you have enough money to fly all around the world whenever you want. But if you don't, then you're going to miss birthdays, you're going to miss important events in people's lives, you're going to miss things, you're just not going to be there. And it's not like you don't want to be close to these people, but after you miss someone's life for a whole year and you come back in, you're just not at the same position that you were, even if you're talking on the phone, even if you're keeping up these relationships. And so I'm going to say, for me, it's been a two-sided coin. It's been really freeing, but it's also been really isolating. And so I just think that that's something really important to keep in mind before you take a trip like this, is to understand that the longer it goes, the less you'll feel like you're home when you go back home, if you cut off your ties. If you're someone that maybe has a house and then they rent their house out and they go travel and they go back and I don't know, but I'm going to say right off the top that that's definitely something that I've experienced. So we have the people are the same, and connecting with people is about demystifying the kind of, whatever you want to call that, this kind of interesting idealized idea of like complexity and culture. So the easiest way to connect with people is to see them all as the same, because that's what we are more than what we're not. Understanding about the community, and that when you leave for a long period of time, you're going to stretch those different situations socially. and then understanding the benefit you could have from that of freeing your identity and being able to become more of an independent person who can have their own thoughts and trust those thoughts and work through them without having to need validation from other people. So there's goods and bads. The third thing that I think is one of the greatest skills or benefits I think has come from 10 years of traveling and being alone and having to work on things and make things work is becoming really self-reliant. I think this kind of ties into the lack of community, but for a really long time, life just completely was up to me, and no matter what happened, I had to deal with it. And this gave me an insane amount of trust in myself. For example, not that this even really is like relevant, because most people aren't gonna get dropped in the middle of nowhere, but I feel like I could get dropped in any country with any amount of money, with anything, a shirt and a pair of pants, and I would be able to thrive in that place. And like 100% certainty, and I would even be excited to try because I know that I could do it. And that kind of self-reliance might seem like it doesn't play over into everyday life, but I think that it really, really does. And it also goes back to this kind of freeing sense of not feeling constrained by social constraints or whatever. Like, it's just like part of trusting that I can make things work is understanding that however I make them work is my personal way of doing it, and I don't have to feel like, oh, I can't do that because it wouldn't, someone wouldn't want me to do that or blah blah blah. So what I'm saying is, like, if I got dropped somewhere, I wouldn't feel any kind of restrictions onto how I could make life work. Obviously not going to hurt people or do bad things, but I guess I'm just saying, like, if an opportunity came that might have seemed like an opportunity, like the old Jay or the old Susie who lived back in Amsterdam for 20 years, like what she would or wouldn't do, it's irrelevant because it's just about taking opportunities, seizing the day and trusting yourself to be able to, go anywhere, do anything, and make the best of it for yourself and thrive. So I think that that's the best skill that I have after these 10 years, which might seem really vague. But it's also really personally powerful. Just this kind of extreme self-reliance that has come from being everywhere and mostly alone and mostly with no money. I didn't start making a lot of money until a couple of years ago. Basically, when I got a girlfriend, that's when I started really looking for high-paying contract jobs, which is something that I am going to talk about in other videos. So you can go check out that. Yeah. But I think that those are some of the biggest just takeaways, I guess, as I sit here and think about travels. I think another part of like social strain and like this kind of thing where you're not playing the same game as other people. For example, like when I go see my family now and they're in debt, or they have these mortgages, or they have student loans, or they have these types of things going on. For me, it's so interesting to see because I never ever participated in that game. And not that the game I've played is better or worse, but you really don't have things in common with the average person because you haven't lived the average life. And this can be really straining sometimes. Not only on the people in your life, but also you personally, just because I feel like you might wonder if it was worth it. And I say that obviously as my own individual spin on it, because it's so hard for me to like look at things as purely good or bad. I think they always have a million different ways to view it and profit and to suffer from anything. But I can definitely say that when you choose a life that is not average, when you then go back and deal with people who are living a more average life, it can be very hard to connect, and people can feel very not offended by you, but they can feel very confused by you and threatened by you, especially when you don't have the kind of constraints that they might have. Like, a lot of people have the constraint of debt, and that kind of confines them into a lifestyle because they've accumulated debt. So just this part of it will be really interesting too, if you choose to live some kind of an ulterior life with travel and different countries and things like that for a while. But yeah, I think that was the most important things. All in all, it's been a crazy adventure, and I think after 10 years, one of the biggest things I can also tell you is traveling isn't a thing anymore. Like, my life is not me traveling. My life is just me living a life. And I know about so many opportunities, and I know about so many things around the world that, like, in a couple months, I'm not going to Nepal to travel. I'm going to Nepal to live a really affordable life in the Himalayas because I love that area. Even though it will just look, I guess, or be classified as traveling around, traveling to Nepal. But I would say, as someone that's now lived internationally for so long, it's just about being lucky enough to have a strong enough passport. And you can also create that for yourself. If you don't have a strong passport, you can get a stronger passport. But being lucky enough to have a strong passport, to be able to live internationally and take advantage of different currencies and take advantage of different places that you love around the world as you get to know them. And so I think that that's really a funny thing too, because there is also such a cliche and a stigma and an idea of what traveling is. But after doing it for so long, I can say that, like, I think that's a really silly thing to carry with you, because it's just the same as anybody else. You're just living your life and living it the best way that you know how. That's what I can really boil it down to. And the best way that I know how to right now is to, work on things online, make some money online, leverage my currency to live in the places where I get the most joy for the least amount of money, so that I can make the money work harder. And it's just like, you just do the best with what you got. And the more that you got, the more that you see, the more that you know, kind of thing. So anyway, I'm kind of rambling now, but that's just a little video that I think is fun to put out here for anybody to maybe get a couple ideas, or anything like that. I would love to hear what you guys think below. Anybody who's lived a similar lifestyle to me, or anybody who's maybe thinking about living a lifestyle like this, I'd love to hear something in the comments. So anyway, thanks for watching, and stay tuned. I'm going to be putting out a lot of videos in the coming months about many different things. So yeah, if you've made it this far, thank you. I love you. Take it easy. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.